They thought we'd beg. Instead, we burned their moon with our bare hands. The last human fleet drifted in silence. Fractured steel and molten hulls lit by the blood-orange glow of a dying star. Debris whispered across the void, the remains of battles long lost, of names forgotten, of Earth itself gone. Commander Alara Ken stood alone on the shattered bridge of the Vanguard Ascendant, her breath visible in the cold of a failing life support loop. Her once gleaming command suit bore the deep scars of vacuum scoring and plasma burns. A single strip of red cloth, a remnant of old Earth, fluttered weakly from her shoulder. She didn't blink as the dead litters of humanity floated past. The broken view screen. She had stopped blinking 3 days ago. The Dominion signal pulsed again, echoing through the corpse of the ship, a deep, harmonic tone meant for submission. To the last living human vessel, lay down your core. You are extinct. Alara looked down at the cracked photo taped to her console, for faces, a family, one she hadn't seen since the siege of Arcadia Station. She closed her eyes, not to cry, but to remember what warmth had once felt like. She opened them again to war. They came from beyond the rim, the Zereth Dominion, a race of radiant intellect and flawless bioforms, shaped by 1,000 generations of gene forging and neural lattice work. Their ships shimmered like glass spun from light. Their voices were as smooth as drifting snow. They spoke of cleansing, of order, of evolution. Humanity called it extermination. No one knew who fired first. But once Earth fell, the stars bled human. Alara had been a junior tactician then, posted to Lunar Command. She watched the blue planet crack from orbit, oceans lifted into the vacuum, cities swallowed in fire, billions gone, and when she screamed into the comms, begging for help, all she heard was static. Now she was the last ranking fleet officer known to be alive. Not that it mattered anymore. The human chain of command had snapped somewhere over the debris fields of Gliese 7. What remained were stragglers, broken warbands, ghost colonies, half-mad engineers turning scrap into guns. But she hadn't stopped. Humans didn't stop. Below decks, what little remained of the Ascendant's crew moved like shadows. Powerless servos hissed in the dark. Sergeant Idrinvale, a behemoth of carbon-grafted muscle and loss, knelt beside the central reactor core, hands slick with cryo-fluid. Across from him, whispering prayers in Old Hindi, was Dr. Samira Kaur, physicist, makeshift medic, an accidental theologian. We've got 12 hours before this hope turns into a tomb. Vale growled, voice scraping like gravel. Samira didn't look up. Les, if the Dominion tracks the power signature, they're cleansing the sector. Burned Eos, then Arcus Prime. We're next. They say one of their elders warned them. Alara's voice came over the intercom. Calm, distant. Told them to leave humans alone. That there's something in us even the stars should fear. Idrin spat oil into the void. Guess they didn't listen. Alara stood in the central bridge node, a cathedral of broken light. Her eyes lingered on a ghost signal, faint, pulsing from the outer edges of the riven expanse. A human code fragment, pre-collapse frequency, buried under solar interference and Dominion jammers. She leaned in, 8A, Outpost R3, holding, relic active, Dominion breach. Then static, patch it through to deep scan, clean. The signal, Alara ordered. That's not a ghost. That's a chance. Samira's voice cracked across the deck. That's suicide. The expanse is crawling with them. Alara turned slowly to the hollow eyes of her crew. Then we go into the storm. Idrin rose from the core, plasma wrench in hand. You want to chase a broken signal into a Dominion? Kill zone on a half-dead ship with no fleet, no backup, and no gods? Alara smiled, not out of madness, but memory, of the Mars uprisings, of soldiers carving resistance out of frozen soil with nothing but shovels and grief. Yes, she said, because we're human, and if there's even a whisper of something they fear, we find it. Outside, the Dominion hunter ships began to converge, their forms like obsidian wings unfolding from hyperspace. A loathsome rippled through the Ascendant, not from engines, from within. Deep in the black of the expanse, something ancient stirred, a frequency long buried. Something built before Earth had language, and the humans, the stubborn, broken, dying humans, were headed straight for it. They didn't know what it was, only that the Zereth did, and that the elders had warned them for a reason. The Zereth didn't conquer like warriors. They unmade, entire moons erased without kinetic force, civilizations folded into quantum silence. Their technology seeped, not like machines, but like viruses, into everything they touched. Language, memory, identity, rewritten or erased. In the Dominion's eyes, humans weren't enemies. They were errors, and errors were to be corrected. The Vanguard Ascendant shuddered as hyperspace ripped open around her, stretching the stars into trembling blades of light. The ship wasn't meant for another jump. Its drive core was cracked, its shielding patchworked with melted plating. But Alara Ken stood at the helm, eyes fixed on a ghost signal and a hunch, the kind of hunch only a dying species could afford to follow. Behind her, Idrin Vale gripped a restraining rail as the gravity well buckled. We're punching through a nest of Dominion sentinels with a reactor held together by faith and duct tape. If this doesn't kill us, I'll punch myself for not dying sooner. Dr. Core chuckled. Just once. You always say that, and I always mean it. Alara didn't speak. Her thoughts were elsewhere, on the words that played over and over in her mind. Relic active. A signal from Outpost R3, a dead relay station buried inside the riven expanse, long thought lost during the first purge. The very name made veterans wince. No one ever came back from that region of space. Not whole. The Dominion called it Voidfall. But humans remembered what the Zereth tried to forget. Outpost R3 had been a research facility. Black Ops, Deep Earth Directorate. It was never listed in public records, the kind of place where terrible things were tested and even worse were buried. And now, something was calling from it. In the high orbit above Yas Prime, light shimmered unnaturally as a Zereth Warden-class flagship phased into the material plane. Sraf Nexus. Its hull was not forged, but grown, laced with neural fiber that pulsed like a living heart. The being that commanded it was not a captain, but a chorus, a collective intelligence of high elder minds. One of them pulsed with dissonance. We warned them, the elder hissed through the lattice mind, fractals of thought breaking and reforming. We warned the chorus, leave the humans to decay. Do not provoke their blood. The central node responded with cold symmetry. They are broken, leaderless, starless. The threat is illogical. They are wounded. That is not the same. New signals began to spike from the expanse, a human frequency, one the Dominion had not heard in centuries, because they killed anyone who knew how to use it. The chorus pivoted. A decision was made without vote, without sound. A fleet of cleansing vessels activated from subspace dormancy. Their destination, the riven expanse. The humans were moving toward something ancient, and the Dominion was now moving to ensure they didn't reach it first. The jump ended like a scream cut short. The Ascendant dropped from hyperspace on the edge of the expanse and was immediately swallowed in darkness. No stars, no galactic drift, just a velvet sea of black speckled with holes, absences of light, worm tears that trembled like dying lungs. Shields up, Alara ordered, though she knew it was meaningless. This place isn't space, Samira murmured. It's memory, burned into reality. She was right. The riven expanse wasn't just destroyed. It was scarred. Quantum echoes pulsed through it like distant heartbeats. Time fractured, light warped. Something had happened here that the universe refused to fully remember. The ship glided in deeper. Then the signal spiked. Clear, urgent, relic, breach imminent. Containment failed. Non-human interface detected. Then, silence. Can you trace that? Alara snapped. Samira's hands flew over the controls. Coordinates locked. 20 clicks below the debris horizon. But Alara, we're not alone. Idrin stepped forward. His voice, unusually quiet. They're here, outside. The void began to ripple. Dominion vessels emerged not with thunder, but with stillness. Dozens, then hundreds. Formations perfect. Lights cold. A siege fleet. Alara exhaled once. Options, run, said Idrin. Hide, said Samira. Alara shook her head. We make it to a 3, even if we have to ram through every one of them. But why? Samira said. Fear rising. What could be down there that's worth this? Alara's voice was iron. The one thing they never wanted us to find. The thing their elders still whisper about in code and shadow. A relic not made by them, or by us. Something they fear more than extinction. Outside, a Dominion destroyer moved into intercept. Its hull shifted like smoke and bone. Weapons primed. Inside the bridge, the humans stared into the mouth of death. Alara spoke calmly, eyes never leaving the screen. Idrin, ready the Firelance cannons. We go through. I command her. He paused, and if we don't make it. She glanced once at the torn photo taped to the console. Her family, smiling under an Earth sky, then looked out into the dark. Then we remind them what it means to corner a human. The ship thrummed. The relic pulsed below. The Dominion descended. The Dominion destroyer fired first. White-hot spears of ionized energy lanced through the void, enough to punch a hole through a moon, but the Vanguard Ascendant was already moving. Alara had ordered the burn before the enemy even locked trajectory. It wasn't strategy. It was instinct. The kind only humans could weaponize when survival was measured in seconds. The ship shuddered, hull plating peeling like scorched bark. The outer deck ruptured. The crew members were vented into the black. Idrin swore and rerouted power through scorched conduits, hands blistering from heat. "We've got 30 seconds before shielding fails completely," Samira shouted, and the core spiking. "It's not going to hold." Alara didn't flinch. "Then we only need 20. They plummeted into the heart of the debris field, a graveyard of ships, human and Dominion alike. Cracked hulls and fractured war stations drifted like corpses in a forgotten sea. The Dominion never salvaged. They raced. But here, they'd tried to bury something. Samira's console lit up with overlapping pulses. Not just Dominion tech, not just human signals. Something older, deeper. "I have a lock on the outpost. It's intact. Barely 10 clicks down," she said. "But, Alara, it's under Dominion quarantine. There's an entire lattice structure around it, cloaked. They're trying to keep something in." Idrin growled. "Not just keep us out." Alara's grip tightened on the armrest. "Then we break it open." As the ascendant dove, Alara opened an encrypted comlink, ancient, analog, untraceable. She spoke into it like speaking to a grave. "This is Commander Alara Ken of the Vanguard Ascendant, broadcasting on Echo Band Omega. If any human units remain in the expanse, it's now or never." For 7 seconds, only static answered. Then, "Repeat, receiving you, Ascendant. Is that by the void? We thought you were dead. This is Resistance No. 9, Arcadia Fringe. We've got a skirmisher winged to minutes out. You're not alone, Commander." Alara's throat caught. "Then come fast. We're about to open the gates of hell." They hit the outer lattice of the Dominion quarantine field like a hammer on glass. The cloaking grid shimmered, revealing the perimeter. 30 obelisks, smooth, dark, humming with energy, placed in a perfect ring around a single object. Outpost of 3. It wasn't a station anymore. It had grown, or changed. Tendrils of metal and crystal had burst from its superstructure, reaching like frozen roots into the surrounding debris. The relic inside, whatever it was, had reshaped the outpost from the inside out, and the Dominion were terrified of it. Alara could feel it in their formation, tight, rigid, overly defensive, not offensive, not attacking. They weren't here to destroy. They were here to contain. "What do you fear, you shining gods?" Alara drove the Ascendant into the lattice. The impact tore the starboard wing free. Fires erupted across the lower decks. Idrin screamed through the smoke as he manually rerouted coolant to the reactor. They broke through. The ship spiraled and crashed into the remains of the outpost hangar. Still screamed. Lights went dark, then silence and breath. When Alara woke, her ears were ringing. Blood dripped from a gash above her eyebrow. The bridge was smoke-filled wreckage, but they had made it. She rose, staggering, gripping the edge of a ruined console. Idrin was slumped against the wall, coughing but alive. Samira was already pulling open emergency med packs, her hands shaking. They stepped out into the ruins of Outpost R3 and saw it. The relic wasn't a device. It was a presence. At the heart of the outpost was a sphere, roughly 20 meters, wide, pulsing with waves of iridescent blue and violet. Its surface was alive, shifting. Folding in patterns that defied geometry, it hovered above the chamber floor, untouched by gravity or time. Samira's breath hitched. "That's not Zereth. That's not anything we've ever seen." "No," Alara whispered. "But they buried it here, hid it behind a wall of death." Idrin narrowed his eyes. "Why?" Before anyone could answer, the sphere looked at them, not with eyes, but with recognition. The chamber lit up, not with light, but with memory, images, Earth as it once was. Green oceans, fire skies, children laughing, cities breathing, and then fire, war, steel rain. Zereth cleansing fleets above burning clouds. Then a human face, a man in a red scarf, standing alone before a sea of flame. Samira gasped. That's Commander Tyron Voss. He disappeared during the first purge. Alara felt her knees weaken. Voss had been her mentor, her father's closest friend, and the last one to transmit from R3. Suddenly, Dominion forces breached the chamber. Elegant and terrible, they floated, not walked. Skin of luminous bronze, eyes like suns. Their weapons were alive, crackling with sentient plasma, but they didn't fire. One stepped forward. Its voice was a harmonic chorus. You were warned. This place is forbidden. Alara stood between the relic and the Zereth. You killed our worlds, our people. Now you say this is forbidden. What are you hiding? The Zereth's voice cracked with something new. Fear. You were not meant to find this. We buried it. Because it remembers. Because it knows what you are and what we did. Behind Alara, the relic began to pulse again. Faster, louder. It was awakening. Alara raised her chin, then let it speak. Above the outpost, streaks of fire lit the black. Resistance ships diving into the fray, ragged and furious. Makeshift. Fighters screamed through the void, tearing into Dominion formations like wasps in a glass. Humanity had arrived, and the relic, whatever it truly was, had chosen a side. The relic spoke in silence. No sound, no voice. Just raw memory poured into the minds of those who stood before it. Alara dropped to her knees, clutching her skull as a flood of images. Burned into her consciousness flashes of the first war, not between human and Zereth, but something older, something buried in that brief, blinding instant. She saw the truth. The Zereth hadn't risen to dominance. They had inherited it from the ruins of a greater empire, and that empire had feared humanity long before the Zereth ever looked up. At the stars, behind her, Idrin stumbled, vomiting beside a shattered console. Samira was pale, trembling. This isn't just a weapon. It's a record, a warning system. The relic pulsed again slower now, centered, from the walls. Dormant systems powered up. Human tech long thought dead grown to life. Screens flickered with old directorate seals. One of them stabilized on a decrypted message. Relic EEO and 6 interface complete. Human DNA recognized. Containment status failed. Activation override. Authorized. The words hung in the stale air of the outpost like the last breath before a scream. Samira looked at Alara. You're the override. In orbit, the resistance fleet fractured. The first wave had broken the Dominion's picket line, but now the retaliation began in full force. Warden, Orson, Harbinger-class Dominion ships phased in across multiple vectors. Spires of living metal opened like blooming flowers, revealing particle lattice weaponry aimed straight for the human swarm. One by one, resistance fighters were swallowed in perfect spheres of violet fire. Commander Chavarez, leading the Arcadia Fringe Wing, screamed over comms, "We're getting shredded. They're adapting to our drives. We've lost 7 ships in the last minute." Alara's voice cut in, cold and sharp. "Hold them off. We can't. Hold them. OFF. Down below." Alara turned toward the relic. It hovered now just a meter from her chest, the light at its core swirling like a newborn star. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, and again images, echoes, but this time voices. Her father's voice. "Do you know what they fear most, Alara?" Her younger self. "Our weapons? No. Our memory. Our ability to remember. What they try to erase." Then came Voss' voice, calm, resigned. "If someone finds this, it means I failed. It means Earth is gone, and we lost everything. But if you're hearing me, that means the relic survived. That means you did too. Finish what we started. Light the spark." Alara clenched her jaw. How? The relic answered. A surge of energy tore through the station. Power grids that had been silent for over 2 decades screamed awake. The outpost trembled as the floor panels lifted, revealing a massive cradle beneath the relic, an engine unlike anything the Dominion had ever created. Organic, quantum-laced, alive. Samira gasped. "That's not a weapon. That's a signal. Amplifier." Idrin's eyes widened. "We're not supposed to use it to fight." "No," Alara whispered. "We're supposed to remember." The Dominion chorus inside the outpost stepped back, unnerved. "This must be destroyed." One of them crackled. Now, Alara stepped forward. "Why do you fear it?" The chorus pulsed, rippled and stable now, the fawade of perfection. Cracked. One of them finally broke protocol, because it contains your origin and ours. Because it shows the lies we were built upon. Because it remembers a time when you beat us. Above, the Resistance flagship Serafon lost its core drive. It detonated like a collapsing sun dragging two Dominion cruisers into the breach with it. Shy's voice, bitter with tears. We're losing too many. This isn't a battle. It's a slaughter. And then everything changed. The Vanguard ascended, half destroyed, powered back online. A massive signal erupted from its core, pulsing outward from the relic's amplifier in a golden spiral. It wasn't a weapon. It was a broadcast. Encoded within the pulse were memories, truths, the story of humanity's fall, the genocide of Earth, the erased records, the Dominion's betrayals, the purging of every species that remembered the first contact wars. The signal didn't just go to resistance ships. It went to everyone, to mercenary fleets, to fringe colonies, to sleeping satellites, even to Dominion vessels whose crews were not yet fully assimilated. And then, to the Xerius slave species, the Vasari, the Shint, the hybrid minds of Varnix 6. They remembered, across the battlefield, ships staggered mid-flight, weapons powered down, alliances frayed. Alara's broadcast didn't demand loyalty. It showed the truth, and in a galaxy starved of truth, that was more dangerous than any warhead. In the command spire of the Seraph Nexus, the Dominion chorus trembled with dissonance, panic. For the first time in eons, there was chaos in the lattice. The cycle is broken. One voice hissed. The memory has returned, said another. They are awakening, echoed a third. We must activate protocol erasure, purge the stars. But even as they spoke, their hold weakened. Cracks formed in their order. Betrayals brewed. The relic had done what no armada could. It had made the truth louder than their control. Back on R3, Alara collapsed against the wall. The relic floated above her, pulsing slower now, spent. Samira knelt beside her. We did it. Alara, they heard us. Idrin limped into view, bleeding, smiling through broken ribs. You just started a war. No, Alara said, breathing hard. We just started a revolution, and above them, across half the galaxy, ships began to turn. In the silence after the signal, the stars paused, not physically, not visibly, but spiritually, as if the cosmos themselves were holding their breath across hundreds of sectors. Dominion warships froze in place. Firing patterns stuttered. Cohesion unraveled. Slave fleets blinked their weapons offline. Entire battle groups, once unified by the Xerith chorus, went silent. Because now, they remembered. And memory was rebellion. Alara stood atop the cracked platform of Outpost R3, blood trailing down her cheek, her armor half melted, her voice raw from shouting. But her eyes burned brighter than ever, across the chamber. Idrin adjusted the interface cable snaking from the relic. That last burst carried past our own range. That signal's writing on every dormant beacon, every buried repeater they forgot to destroy. It's everywhere now. Samira nodded, eyes still wide with wonder. We just gave the galaxy a truth it can't unsee. But Alara didn't smile. No, we just lit a fire. Now we either fan it or burn in it. That fire spread faster than the Dominion could smother. On the shard world of Nakatoon, the enslaved Vasari turned their overseers into the dust. On trade node for 2A, mercenary fleets stopped mid-contract and rerouted to rally points marked human signal verified. On the frigid moon of Belka's Reach, 100 years of silence ended as deep-buried human cryopods stirred ancient soldiers waking to a war they never escaped, and in orbit above Outpost R3, the resistance began to multiply. Fringe fleets, forgotten colonies, exiled captains, ships with no home but still flying Earth's colors. They arrived one by one, then in dozens, then in waves, humanity's ghosts returning to the battlefield. But the Dominion was far from broken, and what they unleashed next changed everything. It came from beyond the Xerith core worlds. Shape, at first, it resembled a ship, but as it moved descended, the scale became clear. It wasn't a vessel. It was a construct moon, a vast obsidian ring world curled into itself, pulsing with blacklight energy, sheathed in spires of event-warping alloy. It was the anathema protocol, the final sanction, the thing the elders never spoke of, because it had no name, only a purpose: erase all memory. Alara saw it in the distance as a tremor through space. Even the relic dimmed at its approach. She gritted her teeth. What in the hell is that? Samira's screen flickered with fragmented records. It's not a ship. It's a suppression array. They don't just kill you with this thing, they delete you. From history, from records, from memory. It scrubs worlds clean, even the idea of them. Idrin leaned against the rail, coughing blood. They're not coming to win the war. They're coming to end the concept of humanity. The Resistance fleet buckled at the edges as the anathema advanced. Ships began blinking out, not destroyed, but forgotten. Entire formations simply vanished mid-transmission, names erased from logs. Flight records corrupted. Even spoken memory became blank. They're deploying it. Commander Shy screamed over the comms. We're watching ships unexist. On board the Ascendant, Idrin turned pale. If they get within 100,000 kilometers of the relic, they'll purge it too. Elara's voice dropped to a cold, quiet place. Then we can't let them get close. She walked to the relic, placed her hand against its burning surface. It hurt. It remembered too much. Can it move? She asked. Samira hesitated. No, but it can be moved. If we link its core to a carrier ship's drive, we might be able to sling it if we survive the surge. Elara turned. No, not we. Me. Idrin's eyes narrowed. No way in hell you're doing this alone. You know the system, she said, soft but firm. You keep the network alive. You spread what we found here. Samira stepped forward. Elara, if you fly that thing, it'll cook your brain in minutes. Elara smiled. It wasn't joy, it was purpose. Then I guess I'll burn bright. Within hours, the Vanguard Ascendant was gutted and rebuilt. Idrin jacked the relic into the ship's broken heart. Samira slaved its neural cord to Elara's implant. The rest of the crew evacuated to the Resistance ships. Only Elara stayed behind. Before the launch, she opened a final encrypted channel, galaxy-wide. This is Commander Elara Khan, daughter of Earth. You tried to erase us. You burned our cities. You shattered our history. But here's what you forgot. We remember. And now, so do you. She turned off the channel. No theatrics, only war. The Ascendant, driven by the relic's energy, ignited like a small sun and accelerated toward the anathema protocol. She wasn't planning to fight it. She was planning to die inside it. In the Resistance fleet, Chavarez stared at the trajectory. She's heading straight into the core ray. Idrin's voice cracked. She's trying to override it. With us, Samira watched the feed. She's not running. She's going to burn her memory into the thing they used to erase us. And Idrin realized what she was doing. She's going to make us the one thing they can't forget. As the Ascendant breached the anathema's outer defense, the relic erupted. Memories poured out, not just Elara's, but all of humanity's. Every voice, every city, every fall, and every stand, all of it, a cascade of defiance. And in the final moments, the ship's hull peeled away, atom by atom, but the idea of Elara burned harder than fire. And when the Ascendant hit the anathema's core, the stars screamed, the void cracked, and across the galaxy, every Dominion ship paused, because for the first time in eons, they couldn't erase her. The anathema protocol fractured but did not fall. In the wake of Elara's collision, its outer ring hung in ruins, bleeding void light and memory-slick vapor into space. A third of the structure flickered, disoriented, its deletion lattice offline, but the core still intact, still erasing, and now it knew their names. On the bridge of the Resistance carrier Severance, Idrin stood locked in a trance. He had been watching Elara's memory pulse through the fleet relays when it hit him like lightning. Not just a motion, but a pattern. The relic hadn't just flooded the anathema, it had mapped its thought form frequency, leaving behind an encrypted echo, and Idrin, broken and bleeding, was the only one alive who could read it. She didn't just die, he whispered. She wrote herself into its mind. Commander Shy turned toward him, voice hoarse. What are you saying? She infected it. A fragment of her of us is inside. If we amplify that signal, if we guide it, we can finish what she started. Samira, still trembling beside the helm, stared through the viewport toward the wounded construct. Then we need to rally every ship, every survivor, every species that remembers what they are. More than that, Idrin murmured, we need to make everyone remember, even those who never knew us, across the system. Resistance comms roared to life, old Earth dialects, songs from forgotten colonies, speeches, footage, defiant last stands all bundled into data bursts and hurled toward every Dominion sector, every Allied outpost. A galactic memory storm. The Dominion tried to jam them, tried to erase the frequencies, but each time they did, another rebel wave broadcast louder, and in the cracks of their chorus minds, something broke. In the neural throne world of Serixis, the Dominion elders convened in panic. 7 minds, fused into one lattice of will, tried to reassert control. Protocol anathema remains functional, threat index at 42%. Memory contagion is spreading across tertiary networks. Human mythos detected in over 100 species. Unacceptable. Initiate zero fire. A silence followed that order, because the one known as the Deep Mind Architect told us. Of the elders spoke, hesitant. We warned them, long ago. Warned who? The others asked. All of them. Of what? The Deep Mind's voice shivered. Of what humans become when they have nothing left to lose. From the moon of Halvarus to the engine belts of Vecta Prime, resistant ships answered the call. Vasari jump fleets, shed memory priests, hybrid war forms from the Roth exile. Even rogue Dominion defectors, those whose neural bindings were never truly complete, now turned their cannons on their former masters. They followed a signal that no longer pulsed from a machine, but from a memory. Alara Ken, a woman whose body was gone, but whose defiance had become code. Idrin stood now in the Severance's data core, surrounded by coils of light-threaded memory streams. Samira worked beside him, frantically adjusting the pulse harmonics. We'll overload the primary relay, she said. We use the relic's imprint to fuse her consciousness into the anathema's lattice. If it works, it becomes her. Idrin nodded, and the Dominion's greatest weapon becomes our greatest myth. And if it fails, then we vanish forever. The Dominion launched their last line of defense. The eclipsed arch dreadforms living singularities wrapped in starsteel, flanked by clone zealots riding the hollowed bodies of fallen species. They descended in unison, targeting the relay ships, and humanity stood on a fractured moonplate. 3 old war mechs, ancient relics from the Terran exodus, stood shoulder to shoulder. Their paint scraped, their cores flickering, but their hearts still warm. They fired into the black, in the shattered hull of a resistance cruiser. A blind pilot whispered the names of his ancestors into the drive core, and rammed a Dominion carrier on a drifting orphan station above the asteroid belt. A child who had never seen Earth opened the comms channel and shouted, "We exist." Back in the Severance's core, the pulse was ready. Now, Idrin breathed. Samira nodded. Godspeed. Alara. They triggered the final wave, and it came. Light without heat, memory without body. 1,000 songs, 1,000,000 screams, one unbroken soul. It rushed from the relay, smashed into the anathema, and ignited it from within. In every Dominion command node, alarms failed. Their minds perfectly ordered became wild. Glimpses of oceans they'd never seen, of languages they never spoke, of lovers, children. Cities burned and reborn. They felt humanity, and it hurt, not because it was cruel, but because it was real. On the edge of the battlefield, Idrin collapsed, his neural interface fused. His final words, caught in a whisper, "She's awake." The anathema's outer hull began to twist. But this time, not from entropy, from transformation. Its black surface turned silver gold, its deletions reversed. Where it had once erased stars, now it birthed constellations of memory, a living archive, a shrine, a warning, and a promise. The Dominion cores fell silent. Across the galaxy, ships turned from war to wonder. For above them, circling the remains of a weapon meant to erase them, burned the symbol of their survival. Not a flag, not a fleet, but a single name, broadcast in light, carved into the heavens, Alara Ken. They said she was dead, but the stars remembered her name, and the machine that once erased history now speaks it like gospel. The anathema protocol, once the Dominion's god weapon, now shimmered with impossible light, orbiting the shattered edge of Sector 1009 like a second sun. Where it had once been black and silent, it now hummed with living memory. Ghosts walked its data corridors. Voices whispered in languages no longer spoken, and at its core, a single soul pulsed. Alara Ken, the human who refused to be forgotten. The fire they could not extinguish, but the Dominion would not yield. They could not. To surrender would be to admit a flaw in the chorus, a crack in perfection. And perfection does not bleed. Perfection does not lose. So they unleashed the final measure, the Everspire. It descended through the void like a needle through flesh, a weapon outside of time, crafted long before the Dominion had names, tall as a planet's orbit. It pulsed with quantum entropy, erasing matter, causality, and will. At its tip hovered the last elder, the deep mind architect. Its voice had echoed in 1,000 minds, 1,000,000 conquests. But now, that voice trembled. You should not exist. It whispered into the void. You were ash, broken, forgotten. What are you now? Alara's answer came not as sound, but presence, her memory, fused with the anathema's lattice, spread like wildfire. Every species that had heard her message, every voice that had whispered her name, each became a node in the storm, and the storm rose, not as an army, but as a legacy, across the galaxy. Resistance ships powered up. The broken war fleet of the Earthburn Wastes reactivated its ancient rail lances. The Vasari memory clans lit their void flares and readied their suicide arcs. Even the Corrin, the hive mind that once fed on the dreams of dying species, now turned against their former Dominion masters. In the bridge of the Severance, Idrin stood, supported by Samira, his veins lit with relic light. She's calling to us, he rasped. Then we answer, Samira said. The Resistance charged the Everspire, 1,000 ships, 1,000 voices, one will. The Dominion retaliated with gravity bombs, null drones, and phase lances that shredded moons. But humanity and its allies pushed forward, bleeding, breaking, burning, because Alara was in their minds, because she had given them what the Dominion had taken, a reason to remember, a reason to fight, in the heart of the anathema. Alara's consciousness reached beyond data. She was more than human now, but she remembered being human. The first time she watched the sunset, the ache of loss, the warmth of Idrin's voice, the way Earth looked, broken and beautiful, from orbit, she focused all of it every second, every scar into a final signal burst, and launched it straight into the Everspire's temporal core. Time screamed, the past buckled, the future convulsed. Every Dominion timeline warped and collided, their own memories turning against them. Victories faded, empires collapsed in their own reflection. The deep mind tried to contain it, but one memory it could not erase. Alara standing on outpost. Arda 3, hand on the relic, daring the stars to remember her. Then came the final moment. The Resistance fleet pierced the Everspire's shield. The Severance led the charge, its hull fractured, engines burning blue flame. Samira took the helm. Idrin, now more light than man, rooted Alara's signal into the core cannons. Together, they fired, not a weapon, but a name. The same name etched into the stars. The same name that now lived in 10,000 species. The same name the Dominion could never kill. Alara can. The Everspire cracked. Its quantum fields collapsed. Its entropy reversed. The deep mind screamed an ancient sound, brittle with age and pride, and then silence and light. In that moment, across the stars, it happened. The Dominion chorus unified, eternal, flawless fractured. Command minds went dark. Slave fleets broke rank. Their history, once so controlled, unraveled. And in its place bloomed a singular truth. You cannot erase what refuses to be forgotten. In the wake of the Everspire's implosion, the Resistance didn't cheer. They wept, because victory was not a triumph. It was a sacrifice. Alara was gone, not dead, but transformed. A part of her lingered in every ship that carried her memory, in every alien heart that had heard her voice. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy stood free. In the ruins of the Dominion archive world, the last elder whispered into a dying calm. We told them, we warned them, what humans were, but no one ever listens until it's too late. They tried to erase us. Instead, we became the stars. The war ended without ceremony. No treaties, no banners, just silence and the soft, aching hum of memory returning to places that had forgotten they ever had one. The Dominion was not destroyed, it was undone. Their chorus minds, once perfectly aligned, lay scattered across the void. Crippled by paradox and memory collapse, their fleets drifted powerless, pilotless. Their command structures collapsed like brittle bone beneath the weight of unspoken truths. Across the 1,000 sectors they once ruled, silence bloomed like spring, and then voices. In the ruins of Outpost R3, moss grew between fractured steel. The relic chamber where Alara had first laid her hands on the forgotten was now a shrine. No one touched it, not because it was forbidden, but because it was sacred. Children of the Resistance came there barefoot, placing relic fragments and scrawled names into the metal floor. They whispered stories of Alara Ken not as a soldier, not as a martyr but as a seed. The first seed in a garden of memory. Samira. Voss never returned to command. She disappeared quietly, choosing instead to roam the liberated sectors, helping survivors rebuild forgotten languages, lost traditions. She taught old Terran songs to the descendants of slave castes who had never known music. Sometimes they asked her, "Did you know her?" She would smile, eyes distant. "We all did." Adrian's body was never recovered. Some said he died with the severance during the final breach. Others believed he ascended with Alara his mind pulled into the lattice that blew within the anathema's core, which now floated peacefully in neutral space. They called it the Archive Heart, no longer a weapon, now a living monument. Those who approached it in silence would sometimes hear whispers, laughter, stories, names. They called it the Echolite, the voice of the one who remembered them. All, the Koran, once predators of the dream realms, became the first species to enshrine a human myth in their own hive lore. They no longer hunted memory, they honored it. The Vasari broke their ancient migration cycle to remain near Terran colonies, offering shipwright secrets in exchange for nothing but stories. And from the ashes of Dominion science, new children rose hybrid minds, cross-species scholars, and memory tamers. They called themselves the Kimburn, not humans, but not human. 1,000 cycles passed, stars shifted, empires rose, fractured, merged, but still through it all one story endured. It was passed in whispered code across long-distance jump relays, painted on asteroid walls and glowing glyphs, etched into the living bark of moon trees, sung in void canticles by monks who had never seen a planet. The story of a people who had no empire, no gods, no perfection, only fire and love, and the unbearable refusal to be forgotten. Once, a Dominion child part of a post-chorus generation, grown, without neural bindings, stood before the Archive Heart. She asked the wind a question. Why did they fight? The answer came not in language, but in feeling, a burst of warmth, the memory of standing in the rain on a ruined earth, the pain of watching a friend fall, and the pride of rising anyway, the sound of a heartbeat, refusing to stop. Then, finally, a name, Alara. The child smiled, and for the first time in 1,000 years, a Dominion-born laughed. Humanity never built a throne, never claimed a crown. They scattered like stars into every dark corner, every scarred moon, every species that remembered what freedom felt like, not to rule, but to remind, to carry the story forward, so it would never happen again. The elders who survived vanished into the deep. No one knows where, no one asked, but in old relics, in forgotten corners of space, sometimes a voice can still be heard. Bitter and odd, we warned them, we told them what humans were, not gods, not monsters, just them, somewhere, far from stars, far from war. A child asks a parent, "Are they still out there?" And the answer, always the same, "They're not out there. Love, they're in here." And the child touches their chest where the pulse of memory lives. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.